Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey, it's Rowdy Ron here just to tell you a little bit about myself and about a good friend of mine as well. This is by request that I'm making this, so I'm going to lay off the comedy for this one here and get a little bit more about me and answer some questions from people that have emailed me and sent me messages here wanting to know a little bit more about things I've done in the past, my careers with wrestling and radio, and now that I'm doing voiceover work and stand-up comedy. Broke into wrestling back in 1989. And how that happened is I was discovered at a radio station. I was working at a place called 92Q, which then switched over to Hot 92 FM. It was a top 40 radio station up in Cleveland, Ohio. And the promoter for Great Lakes Wrestling Association, his name was John Bush, had discovered me on the air. He was just listening to me, I think, over a weekend one time. Liked the energy level I was doing and the fact that I interacted with a lot of my phone calls. That people would call in and I'd put them on the radio and did all the fun stuff that I used to like doing when I used to call radio stations. So I kind of treated my listeners the way that I like to be treated when I was once a listener. And they liked what they heard, and they hired me as their ring announcer, and that was back in 1989, and here we are 18 years later. So I've been doing pro wrestling now for the past 18 years. Some of my highlights, I've worked, like I said, all around the Midwest area. Cleveland, actually all throughout Ohio, I'll say, Pennsylvania, western part of Pennsylvania, West Virginia I've worked in, Virginia, Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky. Trying to think of all the areas I've worked in. Geez, I've been all over the place in the Midwest, so we'll just leave it at the Midwest and go from there. I was very fortunate back in 1999 when I broke into the world of Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is the training grounds for the then called World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now called WWE. And I worked under Jim Cornette, and I had known Jim years prior when he had come up and done some independent shows. I think it was right after he had left WCW, and he was starting to do his own thing called Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And this was back in the early 90s he started doing that. But I got to meet Jimmy. Yeah, it was actually in 1991 is when I first met Jimmy up in Cleveland, Ohio. And lo and behold, 8 years later, I was working for him at Ohio Valley Wrestling. And my first gimmick there, as they call it, my character, was a shady lawyer for Bolin Services. Some of you may or may not know Kenny Bolin or have heard of him. But he was a manager there at the time and best friends with Jim Cornette, which is pretty much how we all got in there, I guess you could say. But Jim Cornette gave me this character of a shady lawyer for Bolin Services called Thurston Throckmorton. I didn't name myself. That was Cornette's name for me. And it was okay. I had to wear the suit and the tie, and I'm not comfortable in the suit and tie. I like being casual. But I am very good at doing impressions, as you may see with all my my videos here. And threw the idea out. We were doing a gimmick where Kenny Bolin, myself, and his accountant that he had by the name of Jerome Croney were going to wrestle this big 7-foot monster named Russ McCullough. And what I decided I thought would be a funny thing is if I was hypnotized to think I was a great wrestler, which led to all three of us being hypnotized to think we were all great wrestlers. And what I did was I grew my hair out, which I don't have now, obviously. Grew my beard out, and I did a killer Macho Man Randy Savage, which I still do. Again, you can see on some of my other videos. And what I did was the Macho Man Randy Savage was my deal. Kenny Bolin was Jerry the King Lawler. And let's see here, what's his name? Jerome Croney was Hulk Hogan. And Croney almost didn't make it because he no-showed a lot. So, but we did the Louisville Gardens deal with Russ McCullough, and the Macho Man just took off. The minute I was on television doing a promo, Jim Cornette just loved it. He was up there at the broadcast booth with Dean Hill doing color commentary, and of course Jimmy did all the stuff mainly for OVW television, and he was helping out with the training to do promos, and Danny Davis and Nick Dinsmore and these guys were handling the training for the wrestling part. But Cornette loved it. Cornette loves wrestlers, but if you can cut a great promo, he loves you even more. And if you can do the combo deal like a John Cena does now, where you can wrestle and you can cut a great promo, then you're gold. Which is what that explains pretty much why John Cena and The Rock and Steve Austin, a lot of these guys have gone far. Ric Flair, not just because they're great wrestlers, but because they can perform on camera giving you a great promo. So anyways, that was my big time at OVW, and that lasted for a couple of years, and got out of it around mid to late 2001. In fact, I think it was right before 9/11 happened. And it was just a clash of problems with myself and Kenny Bolin, but that's for another video that I've already done. So that takes care of the wrestling. As for radio, I broke into radio. I used to, as a teen, call a lot of the local radio stations and do impersonations and do jokes and stuff just to hear myself on the radio. And I always wanted to get into radio. I was the class clown in school, and which explained why I failed, but I was always busy just making jokes and making people laugh, and that would later come back to benefit me in my life. But I got into radio, like I said, back in the late 80s, and my first big break, as I mentioned, was at 92Q, Hot 92 FM in Cleveland. I did stuff for Power 108 on the side as I guess you can say an intern, and they were also located in Cleveland prior to going to Hot 92 FM. I also worked in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had my own wrestling talk show, which at the time was very unique, and this was in 1990, late 92, early 93. And myself and Mike Tenay, which some of you may know from TNA Wrestling now and also from the old WCW broadcasting, we were practically probably two out of a handful of maybe 5 or 6 people that were doing wrestling talk shows at the time on radio. And it was a very unique concept, and the WWF picked up on this, and they did, of course, Radio WWF afterwards. But I worked at WMOH in Hamilton, Ohio, which is just outside Cincinnati there, and I had my own wrestling talk show for about a good 2-3 years there. About 2.5 years, actually, now that I look at it. And got out of there, moved to Kentucky, worked in radio in Louisville, at WDJX briefly, and then I also worked at WPNT, which is The Point, 103.9. It was an all-80s station, and I was there for about a year and a half, maybe about 2 years almost for that. So that's my radio experience. And then I've always called up still to do impressions, things like that, but I got out of radio when I saw that radio is now more satellite feeds and recorded voices than it was live. When I broke into radio, you were live. There was no recorded stuff unless it was like for a feature show, but you were live, and I missed doing that, and that's what helped me. I just decided I don't want to be in radio anymore. If I'm just going to come in there, record my voice, and leave, there was no interaction with the callers or anything like that. Loved 80s music, thought it was a great concept. Couldn't use the Rowdy Ron name, they didn't want that, so I had to change my name. I changed it to Ron Johnson to go with Don Johnson, since Don Johnson was big in the 80s, so that worked out. Now, I'm currently living in Florida, and I'm working voiceover work, doing ringtones for a company out in the UK, and I'm also doing some stand-up comedy, and I'll be appearing at the Improv coming up next month, so check that out. Anyways, I want to say hello to my good friend out there. His name is Jeremy Norman. He's a very cool guy. If you get a chance to check him out on YouTube, go to Used to Be 803. You can see it right here on the screen, USED TOBE 803. Check him out right here on YouTube, and check out all his videos, all his friends. He's a very cool guy, and you can also go to his website at usedtobe803.com. You can check that out as well, and tell him Rowdy Ron sent you. So Jeremy, big hello to you and your friends and your family. I hope all is well with you. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you have any questions or comments, as always, please do feel free to message me or send me emails, and I'll be more than happy to answer any and all questions, and hopefully I answered all the questions I had out there. So, thanks for watching this video, and again, hello to Jeremy, and hello to anybody else out there that watches my videos, and thank you for watching me on YouTube.
Elvis has left the building. Thank you, and good night.